The fundamental problem, Shubham, is that the government doesn't understand the frustrations of the youngsters. We are afraid the government lacks concentration. In our previous talks, it is Dharmendra Pradhan's dharma to resign.
So thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking with us here on HW News. Again, there's a lot of ground to cover like we do every week. Let's start with the biggest story that is playing out here in India first. That is the Cockroach Janata Party protest in Delhi. You saw the kind of scenes that played out. Police brutality was on full display, students being thrashed left, right and center. There are some videos of some miscreants also pelting stones at the Delhi police. This is absolute chaos in the national capital yesterday. There was a lot of coverage by the foreign media as well of this big challenge by the students who have stood up and demanded accountability from the Modi government, starting with education and the resignation of the education minister. How do you see what happened in the last 24 hours, sir?
Good afternoon, and glad to be speaking to you and through you to hundreds of thousands of our friends in India and abroad. Now, you mentioned the foreign media. Well, as a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, he is from the IPS, retired, he told me that he did not watch the Indian media at all, and he got a better understanding of what is happening by watching the BBC, the RT, Russian television, and France 24. So that tells you volumes about how the Indian media, not all, some of them covered it. Now let's go to the crux of the problem. I, for one, cannot understand why Dharmendra Pradhan cannot resign, because let us understand the culture of India's democracy. Let's go back to 1956. There was a big railway accident at Mahbub Nagar in the then state of Hyderabad. And the minister in charge, Lal Bahadur Shastri, later Prime Minister, he resigned. But this was in September 1956. But Jawaharlal Nehru refused to accept his resignation. Then, 2 months later, November 1956, there was another big accident in Tamil Nadu. This time also, Lal Bahadur Shastri resigned and Nehru accepted it. So that is the tradition of India's democracy. Another point is, why did it take so long for Minister Nadda? We all thank him for meeting the delegation, but why did it take him so long to meet them? They have been at the Jantar Mandir for a month or longer. So, one theory circulating is that only after the boys and girls raise the slogan, well, they have been saying all along that Dharmendra Pradhan should resign, and I had maintained in our previous talks, it is Dharmendra Pradhan's dharma to resign. Well, when the boys and girls raise this slogan, Prime Minister Modi should resign, well, it seems then it was decided in order to stop that slogan being raised again and again, they should meet. The minister, Nadda, should meet with the protesters. Well, I do not know whether this theory is correct, but we expect our media, highly reputed for in their investigative skills, to tell us. Now, what is sad is that even after the meeting, the signals coming from the government are disappointing. They say that no commitment was made. That's understandable. But, there is no indication that Minister Nadda will study, along with his colleagues, the demands made and get back soon. It seems, and let's hope we are wrong, that the government's idea was just to sort of, stop those protests and then deal with the matter at leisure. I repeat, at leisure. And another thing is very strange. They removed Wangchuk to the hospital. Well, I don't think the High Court asked the police to do that. High Court asked the police to make sure that he is medically examined. Of course, it follows that you cannot stop with the examination. And so they took him to hospital. I consider it as a correct action on the part of the police. But what is incorrect is, if his wife, Gitanjali, if she wants her husband to be removed to another hospital of her choice, neither the police nor the government of India has any right to stand in her way. And when the matter went to the High Court, the Honorable Judge said, Wangchuk was taken to hospital not on his will, that he was taken to hospital. So therefore, it is all right to keep him there. I think that lacks logic. Imagine a person, Lakshmi Narayana. He sort of becomes unconscious and grievously hurt after a traffic accident. And he is shifted to the hospital by the police. And then his wife comes and she is not satisfied for whatever reason with the hospital. And if she wants to take him to another hospital, will someone say, oh, he came here, not on his own accord, so he has to stay here? So I'm sorry. We expect the judiciary to speak with better logic. And let us remind ourselves, the whole thing started because somebody in the judiciary used words giving the impression that the youngsters who are agitating because they don't have jobs are cockroaches. I said used words, which gave the impression, because the Honorable Chief Justice later said that that is not what he meant. We appreciate that again. But the fact is, he did use words which seemed to some people to imply that for him, these youngsters are cockroaches. Of course, that implication was wrong. But, as the Buddha said, once you say something, well, you can never take it back. You see, the fundamental problem, Shubham, is that the government doesn't understand the frustrations of the youngsters. That is a fundamental problem. And you must have read on 18th July, Anand Kumar, a BTech electrical engineering, committed suicide in Kanpur. He applied for a post. He made 50 applications and he didn't get a job. So that is the problem. We are having what I call jobless growth. It is not enough if the Prime Minister or any other minister on television is seen as handing over so many appointment letters to so many people. That's good. That's welcome. We appreciate that. But we have to understand and, and the real problem, that is jobless growth, and do something about it instead of making statement after statement after statement. Youngsters are disappointed.
Right, you've put it very beautifully. So you've put the entire thing in context, pretty simplified it and put a very nice context to it. But what I want to understand from you is, and the reason I'm bringing this issue up, this national issue up, is when the world sees this protest, when somebody sitting in a foreign country sees this protest, we claim that we are the largest democracy in the world, we have free elections and everything is hunky-dory. But when the world sees these visuals of police thrashing students left, right, and center, what message does it convey to the world at large about the state of our democracy today?
Well, the world is waiting to see India correcting itself. As I have been saying, we wish India to be a self correcting democracy. So it is, after all, let us take the question of Dharmendra Pradhan. He is not personally responsible for what happened. There is no reason to believe that he was taking any money from anyone. But under his watch it occurred. Go back to Lal Bahadur Shastri. He was not manning the signals or checking the strength of the bridge, but he took moral responsibility. And that is what we expect of our ministers. That is point number one. And as regards India's democracy, the world will naturally take note of the fact, while India may be the, fourth largest, fifth largest, sixth largest GDP and all that, which is very good. Given the population, we should be the first, but that will take time. But anyway, we are not running a race. We should not be running a race. What is important is to take care of our people. Make sure they have enough to eat. Make sure they can educate their children. Make sure that the children after education get jobs. That is what we should concentrate on. And we are afraid the government lacks concentration, or to put it more diplomatically, there is scope for more concentration.
Right. Let's move on to some of the other big developments that we're seeing from the world. Just a couple of days back, I think you wrote an opinion piece where you said that Trump's Iran war has no end game. And in fact, while we are talking, some international media portals are flashing that the Houthis have announced a Saudi naval blockade, threatening a new front in the US-Iran war. It's a question we discuss every week, where the war stands currently. So this week, where do you see the war standing? Do you see that perhaps the US could go ahead with a ground invasion, or do you think this stalemate will persist for some more time in the current shape and form?
I do not know, and I don't want to predict as to whether the United States will go ahead with a ground invasion or not. But I want to make a couple of things very clear. One, I'm afraid it's going to get worse, much worse, before it gets better. And in fact, when President Trump signed with much fanfare that 14-point MOU at the Versailles Chateau Palace, well, he did not mean it. He put his signature, but his heart was not there. And the Ayatollah has said that President Trump's signature is of no value. Now, President Trump's Central Command has been bombing Iran. On the one hand, they say that the bombing is to degrade Iran's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz. That is what the Central Command says. But President says that, we shall finish them off. We shall bomb their power plants, their bridges, and nothing will be left. And the his body language when he says these things, deriving pleasure from committing acts of great cruelty. This is most sickening, you see. Now, the latest we hear is that Qatar and Pakistan have passed on to Iran a message to agree to a 10-day ceasefire, during which time the two parties can sit down at the table. Now, we may take it that Qatar and Pakistan would have passed on that message only after getting concurrence from Washington. And we are still waiting for Iran's reaction. My view is that while it is true that President Trump cannot be trusted, he has betrayed trust in the past, but nevertheless, it will be correct and it will be in the interest of Iran, it will be in the interest of America, it will be in the interest of the whole world if Iran agrees to it and sits down. And it is my view, since the Iranians, I have been maintaining, are good at playing chess. Only thing that I should add, that, they have been playing chess and fairly well. But then they have been playing against Trump, who plays poker. Now, at times, in what happens in real life is that, you tend to imitate your opponent's strategy. That is, even Iran can be tempted to play poker. And I'm afraid that the IRGC and some other elements in Iran believe that there is no need to have any ceasefire, and that Trump, facing the rising political cost, will be compelled to make more concessions. But I think that will be the wrong approach, because in the process, hundreds or thousands of Iranians will be killed, and huge economic damage will be caused to Iran. So the right thing will be to sit down. And important point here, Iran should make a chess move. Iran should say, while the 14-point memorandum says that the nuclear matter will be discussed towards the end, we are prepared to discuss it right now. We want to make it once again clear that we have no intention of making an atomic bomb. Okay? We repeat it, but we shall give it to you in writing only after other things are settled. But we tell you this, we give it to you even in writing as part of our conversation. But let us be very clear. The frozen funds, the sanctions, the blockade, all these have to go till we give it to you in writing formally. But we are telling you now, and we are even giving it to you in writing informally. So what is your real problem? Is the nuclear matter that is your problem, or is it something else? If the United States is able and willing to negotiate with good faith without subjecting itself to dictates from Tel Aviv, Iran should tell this to the whole world. Iran is prepared. That will be the way of playing chess.
Right. In fact, while you were sort of elaborating on your point, I just came across another article that says, this is put out by CNN, and this is quoted the Pentagon, which has said that nearly 100 US troops have been injured in the last 2 weeks as bombings continue. Can Trump afford, how long can Trump afford to not act on ending this war as these casualties come out? There have been several analysts who said that the Pentagon has been rather slow in revealing the casualties that America has suffered. How long can Trump continue to sustain like this politically for his domestic audience?
Well, first about the number of casualties. The official figure is 17, I believe. Now, a source in Delhi tells me it's an intelligence source, not currently in office. He tells me that the actual figure is much higher, 20 to 30, and the Pentagon is not releasing it officially because they will. You see, people get injured and they are normally taken to Germany, and later if they die there, well, you can say that they did not die in the field. You know what I mean? This is, of course, you know, splitting the hair. Okay, but Pentagon is capable of that. Now your question is, how long can President Trump afford it? Now there the answer is complicated because don't forget, President Trump, he has disconnected himself from the real world. You know that he said the other day that China had intervened and digitally, and that is how he lost the 2020 election. Now, if he honestly believes that, my question to him, when did he come to know of that? And why has he been keeping quiet about it till now? And B, tell us how can China intervene and cause his defeat in an American election? You just can't make a statement. So, in other words, a man disconnected with reality, well, he can go in his own way. He can do what I call somnambulism, sleepwalking. So first we have to wake him up.
Let's move on to another development that is coming from the United States. Senator Lindsey Graham, who passed away on the 11th of July, a bill that he championed that eventually seeks to reduce the tariff threat on China and India. That an updated version of that bill was came up, and it, I believe, that was backed both by the Republican and Democrat senators. What is your reading of this legislation? Do you think it will provide India some long-term relief on the tariff threat and the tariff war that President Trump has unleashed?
Well, I had met the senator way back in Doha at a Doha dialogue. He came across as someone very hawkish, and as regards his death, above all, first of all, our condolences to his family. I mean, his sister who is there. I believe he was unmarried, but to his family. But having said that, what he wanted was 500% duty on countries buying Russian oil. That is not sensible. Now, of course, the latest bill speaks of, I believe, 100% or so, but again, it is very much watered down because it also says that President Trump can give a waiver to any country he chooses. You see? And then Trump says that he wants to include Iran oil also into the same bill. So for the time being, the bill is not active. So let's hope that it will remain inactive for longer, in fact, forever.
The other big development that happened vis-a-vis India on the global stage is that it has launched its campaign for a non-permanent seat at the UN Security Council. External Affairs Minister of India, Jai Shankar, unveiled the candidacy at the UN headquarters in New York, running under the theme Shanti, that is securing holistic advancement through norms, trust, and integrity. And India will compete against Tajikistan, I believe, for the lone Asia Pacific seat. What is your assessment of this development, and how do you see this playing out for India, sir?
Well, I think India should contest, and External Affairs Minister has started the right way. But let me make one or two points. Way back, we should learn from the past. way back in 1996, when I was ambassador in Doha, India was contesting for a non-permanent seat against Japan. And I called on the foreign minister and he assured me that Qatar would support India. I thanked him, but when I sent the telegram to MEA, my first paragraph is what the foreign minister told me. But my second paragraph was that given Japan's investment in the LNG field in Qatar, I do not believe what the foreign minister told me. It is my reckoning that Qatar will vote for Japan. But my last paragraph said, this is not a decided issue. We should keep on pressing Qatar. Now, let me tell you something, how Japan was handling it. Japan asked for in writing from the PR, permanent representative, the Japanese PR in New York asked his counterpart in, say, country A to give in writing that they will support Japan. And the same thing, the Japanese foreign minister requested his counterpart in country A to give them in writing. Now, as I said, I was skeptical as to whether we will make it. Then I came to know that in MEA they had put, despite my warnings, Qatar among the countries solidly supporting India. So I wanted to do some checking. So I talked to my Bangladesh counterpart who had come there from New York where he was DPR. I told him, listen, if I ask somebody, a country, are you going to support us? They will always tell me, yes, of course. But if you ask whether you will support India, they are likely to tell you the truth. So will you do me a favor? Make a few phone calls to New York and find out the situation. He agreed. And 10 days later, he told me, Fabian, you will get 40 votes. Well, as it turned out, India got 40 votes, Japan got 142 votes. So let MEA take care. Let's learn from the past. Now, the second part of my response to you is that India qualifies for a permanent seat in the Security Council on any criterion. I don't want to expand on any criterion. But India has gone about it not in the right way. By joining with Japan, Germany, and Brazil and making the G4, India has hurt its own electability. I'll tell you why. China will never agree to Japan's being a permanent member, as of now. Russia will never agree to Germany's becoming a permanent member. Okay? And in any case, let me ask you, why have another permanent member from that small part of the world called Western Europe? You already have France and the United Kingdom, isn't it? So there is no logic. Okay? Now, second point. Why do you announce your candidature before the election is announced? Aren't you putting the cart before the horse? Third point. The G4 was supposed to be G5. That is, in 2004, when the General Assembly was on, these G4 countries and South Africa met at a high level, and it was decided that, I think it was on the 20th of September 2004, that the next day there will be a press conference and they will announce the formation of G5. But when the next day came, morning, and the press conference was ready, there was nobody from South Africa. Then a telephone call came. It said, unless the Organization of African Unity passes a resolution to that effect, South Africa cannot associate itself with this move. So G5 became G4. And I believe South Africa was wise. You see, what India should have done is we had, and we still have support of the Global South. And there was a time when the non-alignment movement was strong. India should have got a resolution approved in the GA simply saying the number of permanent seats should be raised from P5 to, say, P11 without mentioning India as a candidate. In that case, the P5 would have found it very difficult to oppose it because, under the charter, the P5 have to ratify it. You know what I mean? So, once it is ratified, India would have got enough votes in the GA. Now, can India go back? Well, I suppose India can and India should. But, these things should be done diplomatically. But I repeat, announcing a candidature before any election is announced is not the wisest thing you can do.
Right. And as we are running short on time, we'll keep one last question about the UK. The new Prime Minister has taken charge, Andy Burnham, and he's promised a new social and political model for the United Kingdom. Given the revolving door policy that the UK has seen in the recent past, how confident are you of this Prime Minister who's promising change like the others? Do you see any major difference that could take place in the UK under his leadership?
Well, one thing which I have noticed is that Andy Burnham doesn't want to do any globe-trotting, meeting with his peers. One of the first things which Starmer did upon taking over was to rush to Kiev, Ukraine, to show solidarity with Ukraine. I personally thought it was unnecessary. And later, he signed some 100-year treaty with Ukraine. Now, listen, we human beings, we live 70 years, 80 years, and we hold an office like that with the Prime Minister for 5 years, 10 years, and we sign a 100-year treaty. So, if Andy focuses more on more on internal matters, that will be wise. Second, Starmer permitted some private sector businessman to give, clothes to his wife. Now, let us hope that Andy will not do that. Now, also he says he wants to distribute power from the Whitehall to the rest of UK. And another thing is that Starmer foolishly sent Lord Mandelson as ambassador to Washington, even when he knew that he was implicated in the Epstein case. So let us hope this younger man will not do such wrong things and he will focus on, now he has to turn the economy around. That is the most difficult thing. But I think with a good government, with a clear vision, it can be done. There is nothing which good governance or diplomacy cannot achieve, provided you act with vigilance, diligence, and resilience. You may make a mistake or you may fall, but if you fall, get up, stand up, and run faster.
All right. On that note, Ambassador KP Fabian, so thank you so much for speaking with us. It was a pleasure listening to your views. Thank you.
My pleasure too, and thank you for easy and difficult questions.
Thank you, sir.